Taste the biscuit. Taste the goodness of the biscuit. Taste the honey sauce. Taste the goodness of the biscuit with the honey sauce. Don't get that honey sauce on me. I don't like the way it tastes with my chicken wings.
Was I muted that whole time? Man, I hate it when I do that in the morning. I was just saying, hey, I'm Tabitha Hassell, Tabs on Tap. We're gonna talk about Iran. I'm gonna shorten it really quick. We're gonna talk about Iran. I hate it when I do that. I do that because I'm always coughing when I first come on, so I mute myself for a couple seconds and I forget to unmute. We're gonna talk about where how we got to this day, where we're at now. Today's going to be a pivotal day because today we're going to probably see, is it going to escalate further or are things going to backtrack a little bit? Today's going to be a very important day. We're going to talk about where do things go from here. We're going to talk about that first terror attack in Austin, Texas. We got Colonel Joe Adams of the Washington Guard getting ready to pop in with us now. And good morning, Elizabeth. And before we get too far, I do want to say here, let me bring Colonel Adams in. I want to talk a little bit about Carl Schneider. He lost his grandson this weekend. Let's see here. Colonel Joe Adams of the Washington Guard. Good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning.
I love the shirt.
I have 54 of these.
I bet you do. I bet you do. And Margie, I think I've got the sound now. Margie's like, I can't hear you. I think I got that fixed now. Colonel Adams, can you give us an update on how Carl's doing? I know he lost his grandson this weekend. Just a terrible situation.
Yeah, I really haven't bothered the family. I guess I'll just. Carl called me and told me, and he was pretty much beside himself and just said, I don't even know why I'm calling you, but I have to tell you. Because him and I were working on a project for the Washington Guard with some homework projects I gave him. And then out of nowhere, this happened. He got notified. So I've left the family alone, but God bless him. He's in my prayers. And because, Carl is one of my main guys in the Washington Guard.
Most definitely.
Some people say there's nobody that can't be replaced. Well, Carl's a guy that can't be replaced. So God bless him and his family.
Most certainly so. I've said plenty of prayers for Carl and his family this week after losing his grandson. I'm the same way. I didn't reach out to Carl. I thought, I'm going to let their family have their peace. Well, Colonel Adams, we've got a lot to talk about today. Drew, of course, Colin's on the line already. Gas prices are definitely going up. Well, Drew, I agree. I got blasted for saying that on social media, but gas prices are going to go up.
Nah, that's normal. So what? It's okay. They'll come back down.
That's the least of our worries, that's for sure. But yeah, gas prices will go up. We already know, oil per barrel, it's been pretty low. It's supposed to, hit like $70 something today. It's going to go up over $100. but it's going up. There's a lot of price gouging that goes on, so that's what we
Oh, yeah.
watch out for. It's going to be those price gougers. But the Iranians, of course, have closed the Strait of Hormuz, and Hormuz, and they how many tankers have they hit now? 3 or 4
Yeah, 4.
tankers.
Mhm.
There's been some injuries there. We heard this morning, Colonel Adams, we've lost one more
Mhm.
American life, unfortunately, over in Iran. And we're going to talk about that, of course. Now, Colonel Adams, you and I, we've been on this show. We've been talking about what's taking place in Iran for how many weeks now? I mean, 10, 12. I've talked about it since 2010. But but here we are, 47 years in the making. This is about a regime change. This is not about nuclear weapons. This is exactly what we talked about last week, and that is that we found out definitive proof that Iran was creating long-range missiles that could reach the United States. I know I talked about it last week,
Mhm.
and that's what this is really about. It's like we have to take out the regime because they're developing weapons that can harm us outside of nuclear weapons.
Yeah, and they're so crazy they would do it. Before we get started on that, I'd just like to give a shout out to the supreme leader of Iran. Hey, it sucks to be you. Ha ha.
And they've already found a replacement. There's a lot of mixed reports about this replacement. I believe his name is Ayatollah Ali Arifa, I think. But some people are saying, "Oh, he's already been killed." But I think that's a different guy because I just saw this guy give a speech last night. I think the guy that people think has been killed is not the one that's been killed because every time one Ayatollah is taken out, they just raise another guy up in the ranks. But Colonel Adams, as we know, we've been talking about this. As I told you guys last week, the Trump administration never planned on waiting those 10 days. That was never the issue. This strike happened because just like in any situation like this, we have folks on the ground and they said, hey, the Ayatollah, along with a lot of their top leaders, are at his compound. They're there right now. Now is the time. And they were waiting for that moment. It could have happened on day 1. It could have happened on day 10 or 11, but it did happen. And that's why we conducted that first strike.
Yeah, ingenious. I mean, thank God for our CIA and the Mossad. They did a great job to put all those people in place at one time. That was just ingenious, and in the daytime strike was even unbelievably more ingenious. But people have to understand, Donald Trump is so unpredictable. But if he tells you something, it's going to happen. And so, we've talked about this several times. I started speaking adamantly about the Islamic problem in this country, in this world, 20 years ago. I mean, adamantly. And people thought that no way, you're just a crazy old Marine. And no, and it's finally happened after 20 years of me preaching about what we should do. It finally happened, and we got a president that had the cojones to do it. And thank God he did. So he's going to finish the job.
Well, he is going to finish the job. Now first let's talk about how did we get to this point, and we're going to talk a little bit about what's going to happen today, and then of course where we head into the future because there's a lot of folks chiming in from Russia to China to Saudi Arabia, and there's a lot of back and forth things that are going on now. We know, in my opinion, what led up today is obviously, like I said, 47 years in the making. Then all of a sudden, we've gone back and forth with Iran for decades, as far back as I can remember, about their nuclear weapons program. That's not what this is about. No, we don't want them to make nuclear weapons. But I knew as soon as I heard they were making that long range missile, I thought, man, that's it. And Colonel Adams, I know you know this, but if there's anything that Iran does, they make missiles nonstop, 24/7, manufacturing missiles. I
Mhm.
believe at the start of this, I don't know if I want to call it a war or a conflict, but at the start of this situation, they were estimated about 3,500 missiles, and of course they've launched a lot of them, but they've got a lot more to go.
Yeah, and they were the big manufacturer of the suicide drones too, which I
Yes.
find interesting. I like the fact that the drones are so expendable. They just send them out and don't plan on them coming home. Hey, but because of what's going on in this country and some of the things I can't speak about, uh, I have, as of yesterday, I raised the Washington Guard readiness level to DEFCON 3 because I predict, like Colonel West has talked about, we're going to start getting some incidents inside these borders.
We are, but we can't talk about that yet. We got to talk about that at the end of the show. But you
Okay.
are right, and we are going to talk about that because that's a few more people join in at the end of the show. So I want to make sure we save that conversation for those folks. Somebody messaged me this morning. They're like, "Don't talk about it till the end. You know, to cover everything else first." We're going to have a lot of other folks joining us here shortly because they're used to us getting into the good stuff towards the end of the show. But first, I just want to talk a little. We know why we got here. I mean, we all know why we got here. What took us to this point. Now, what I want to talk about, Colonel Adams, is where we stand today, because, we have all of these, all of these different countries, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, all of these, Saudi Arabia, these different countries stepping up saying, hey, Iran, you attacked our country. Yes, there's American assets here, but you attacked our country. Our people are injured. We have infrastructure that's damaged. So we feel that we have the right to strike back. So we've got that situation. No one has yet, but they're certainly talking about it. Then Saudi Arabia, they're saying, hey, we're going to jump into the mix. But then Saudi Arabia released a different statement. I saw it early this morning where they said, hey, United States, you abandoned us. We counted on you for protection. You use our airspace. You have a base here, and yet you didn't protect us. You abandoned, all of these countries in the Middle East that have hosted you for so long, and instead you raced over to protect Israel and not us. So I don't think that's going to change the tune of things. And then we have France, we have Germany, British planes are already in the skies, that already took place. So, then we have Russia and China who are saying everybody's just got to stop. Well, Russia hasn't said as much. China's like, everybody has to stop what you're doing right now.
Yeah, when the British and the French turned down our ability to launch the invasion from them, I've given up on them. Part of the reason is political, and part of that is fear. The French were concerned about an uprising for attacking Islam, the heart of Islam, which is Iran, and the British, shockingly, was the same reason. I mean, when you have a Islamic mayor in every major community in England, there's going to be some political pressure not to get involved. So they're walking a type wire over there. They're getting what they deserve. Now they've come around and said, okay, we've got to identify. And the reason they now all of a sudden are on the bandwagon is the fact that they know that their country's in big trouble. They're going to have a huge Islamic problem. And guess who they're going to look to for help? That would be us. So Correct. They're playing both sides of the fence. So
yeah, anyway, they are. And yeah, they haven't really done a lot yet. I know we had British planes in the skies. They did not carry out any type of missions, at least from what I understand. They were there as a kind of a defense mechanism. And now, of course, we have a British base over in Cyprus that was attacked. They sent over a drone to kind of take out the runway there, so adding one more, country in the mix. But here's the thing, and we've all seen it. Iran is just very indiscriminately lobbing these, their drones and their missiles just everywhere. They've got this ton of ballistic missiles. And look, they're hitting hotels. When you go over to Dubai and you attack their 5-star hotels, I mean, these are occupied hotels. I haven't yet heard, of any of the casualty counts. And then you go over to the United Arab Emirates, and it's the same thing. You're attacking their 5-star hotels and resorts. They launched I don't know if it was a drone or a missile right in the middle of Palm Island. I mean, this is not a good look for Iran. No wonder these Middle Eastern countries are upset.
I think there's a tremendous communication gap within the world of the Islamic regime right now. They know they're on their way out, and they're all cutting deals. I do feel sorry for some of the Iranian people, even though they're Muslims. The fact that they've basically been living in a concentration camp. They got 2 generations now that's grown up and have never really experienced freedom. And I think they're going to turn it all around. That what really upsets me is, the Democrats. I mean, how long did it take for the Democrats? The Democrats in this country are so evil, they hope Donald Trump loses the war to discredit him, instead of getting behind, like in World War II, and getting behind our military and say, yeah, let's get rid of the bad guys, the enemies, the people who would kill us. No, the Dems are arguing whether he has the right to even do that. Well, they lost their minds. Of course, they've lost their minds. That Kane guy gets on TV yesterday. Was that Tim Kaine? Was that his name? The guy like to scream, and is saying this is totally unlawful what Donald Trump's done. Emancipate a country, kill people who would kill us first. No, I mean the Democrats, if other than the sweatshirt guy, hopes we lose the war because it would discredit Donald Trump. Terrible thing.
They do. And they hope for American casualties so that they can blame it on Donald Trump, which, by the way, I think I was saying this earlier when my microphone was off, that number has climbed to 4. And we lost another American service member overnight. Now, Colonel Adams, I don't know if things have changed when it comes to the military reporting casualties, but I know in the past when we've had some type of conflict or a war, we didn't, or even back when Iran used to, or Iraq was attacking our military bases, we wouldn't really hear about casualties right away. In fact, I remember being on a show I used to be on, and I would be talking about, hey, I know there's casualties because I know people on the ground who have told me, yes, there's casualties. I know people in the military have said there's casualties. I remember one time when they were using some type of a weapon and hitting our bases where these guys were getting concussions. Our U.S. troops were getting concussions, but nobody would talk about it on mainstream media. I talked about it, and a lot of people weren't happy that I talked about it. But then 2 months, 5 months, 6 months later, we'd hear the report. Oh yeah, there were casualties in that incident, and yes, some of our service members did suffer from concussions. So with Donald Trump, is things different? Do we have more transparency? Can we trust the numbers of casualties?
No, he's going to get in front of the argument. He's releasing that information because the Dems, if he doesn't release it, the Dems are going to use it against him. There's an internal war going on here between the Democrats and the Republicans. The more these people show their true colors of how they hate this country, and they do, there's going to be a time, I might not be around and live that long, but mark my word, push comes to shove, there's going to be a huge problem between the Republicans and the Democrats. And I'm not talking about just verbiage. I mean, this thing's going to come to a head. We're being sold out in this country, all for power and greed. The Democrats, stand by. You're on the wrong team. It's not within the next 5 years, 10 years, but this has got to come to a head. We cannot continue our political avenues the way that are being ran. The Democrats hope, I'm telling you, the Democrats hope we lose this war, and it is a war. That's how evil they are.
I think I agree with you on that. I'm seeing, it's kind of funny. You watch the people in Iran celebrating, not all of them. Iran's kind of divided. I mean, we've got to acknowledge the fact that there's about 40% of citizens who live in Iran who want to live under Sharia law. They want to wear their black burqas. They worship the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, and then, of course, 60% of the people want to be free. And they've killed so many people. We've talked about it so many times on this show. They ran out of body bags. And you've seen the stacks and stacks of bodies. They were going out into the streets. This is why I don't feel bad for losing the life. Normally, I would never want to see someone die. That's, against what I believe in. I don't like to see war. I don't like to see airstrikes against another country. But at the same time, I know what Ayatollah Khamenei has done, and what the Iranian regime has done. I watched the videos. They were so graphic. I couldn't even show them here, where they were taking vehicles out into the streets and plowing down protesters. They were going into the hospitals and they were just shooting the injured. If they didn't kill them in the streets, and they went to the hospital to finish the job. And that's how brutal the Iranian regime is. And we already know, of course, through their different paramilitary branches. And I know some people are, the proxies, of course. Everybody has proxies. We have proxies. They have proxies. I don't care so much about that, but we have the Houthis, we have Hezbollah. We've taken out the leadership now, of course, of Hezbollah, and we have Lindsey Graham wanting to conduct airstrikes on Lebanon, of course. Leave it up to Lindsey Graham, but things are in a crazy place right now. We've got to deal. This is about a regime change, whether the Democrats like it or not. This is about a regime change. We have taken out 40 of their top leaders. Our number one goal in this mission was to take out their leadership. That was the number one goal. It is the very first strike we made, was right on top of the Ayatollah's home, where we took out their leadership. We were waiting for
Yeah.
that moment to make that first strike. And we've done that. Now here we are, it's Monday. This all unfolded a couple days ago. I've hardly even slept because I've been trying to keep an eye on what's going on. But now we've got different countries, talking about coming into the mix. We have Israel. We have Donald Trump saying, hey, we're in there for the long term, because if the goal is to change the regime, it doesn't happen overnight. You can take out all their leaders. So Colonel Adams, I don't know what the next step is. I'm going to count on you to give us all the answer to what this next step is. Because when you conduct a regime change like this, they're just going to keep placing new ayatollahs. They're just going to keep replacing all that regime. How do we ensure that the regime is over?
Well, the regime, based on these levels of the military personnel that were loyal to the supreme leader, who's now dust, they've got to be sought out and convinced to either behave themselves. We're going to go democratic, or you're going to be excommunicado. So it's a long process, but they're doing it right because they learned about it from Iraq and the other places where they dismantled the leadership, and then we left and it turned into a civil war. Trump's too smart for that. It is going to be a long process, but that's okay. But to kill 32,000 of your own people, now picture the United States, 32,000 of your population who were just protesting because they know that you're evil. I mean,
and those are modest numbers. If you talk to a lot of people in Iran, they say it's closer to 80,000.
I don't doubt it. My concern is inside these borders of the United States. Now, according to Border Patrol, that the Biden administration, they had released at least 1,500 POIs into the United States, even though they had them and they caught them, and running a background on them. These were persons of interest that should have been turned over to the FBI, like when I was on board out there. They didn't. They were ordered to release them. Over 1,500 people. Where are they? If you don't think that those people are not going to do something to get back to the United States, because don't forget, they want to die for Allah. And I say we give them the opportunity.
I just read a report this morning that I believe it was the FBI. There was an agency that stated today that there's around 18,000 terror cells in the country. But then if you talk to Tom Homan, he said it's closer to 2 or 3 million. 2 or 3 million. Think about that. And I watched late last night, I watched one of the biggest mosques, the one that, of course, all of the folks around the country look up to. In Iran, they raised the red flag of revenge. And you know what that means? That's the signal. That is the signal. Remember, we've talked about what's the signal, and that is the signal.
So my message to them is thank you. you marked the target. History will tell us, future generations will look back and say, why didn't you take them out when you had the chance? Why do you do this? Because of our democracy and using our Constitution. And I swear to God, until we stop identifying Islam as a religion, it's not going to change. Because when you recognize a religion, it's right in the Constitution, and they use that against it. It's not a religion. Religions don't go around killing 32,000 of their own people in the streets because they disagree with the government. No, that's not a religion. That's an ideology.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. And we saw our first terror attack that just unfolded, early Saturday morning. And that was in Austin, Texas. And I'm not sure, I know you're very busy, Colonel Adams. I don't know if you've had a chance to follow through with that. But that was at Buford's Bar. I've got a video of it here I'm going to play. Now, we've cut out the graphic parts. It's just a general video. But here we are. As soon as I saw this, I woke up really early in the morning. Yesterday, I saw this. I said, that is a terror attack. I know what a terror attack looks like when I see one. And no one had to tell me that's what it was. And here enough, we have a naturalized citizen from Senegal. We will not say his name. That's one thing we will not give him the credit of doing, who came in to this bar. He stopped. He was shooting people on the road, came into, I don't even know I don't think he fully entered the bar. I think he was just kind of shooting through the door. And we don't see that part, of course. And he had on a shirt that said property of Allah. He yelled his typical Allah Akbar, whatever it is they say, But I'm going to show you this quick video because you know what? These are young people that were killed. This is just a horrific situation. I got to make sure I play the right video because I've got a few here. That was a crowded bar. Cut out the bad parts. Here we have crowded bar, Austin, Texas. This is exactly what people who are loyal to Sharia law, you know, this is what they do. You know, we expect them to be at a festival, at a sporting event, but that's not how it works. How many terror attacks have taken place at bars and nightclubs over the, you know, the history?
Mhm.
It's been a lot because what are they against? They're against dancing, music, drinking. So it's clear why they might hit a nightclub or something like that. They've hit gay nightclubs before because guess what? You know, they're against the gay lifestyle. So they're, you know, it could be anywhere, Carla. You know that. It could be the grocery store. We've talked about hospitals and healthcare facilities. And, you know, you could be walking down the street or stopped at a stoplight or on the highway. You know, you just don't know. There's nowhere to predict where this is going to unfold.
That's right. And we've got away with it for so many decades and a couple of centuries now that people are just desensitized that people don't think it can happen to them. And when it does, they say, well, I can't believe that happened. You know, I talked about, you know, when the FBI took off those 7 characters November the 5th that were planning a strike inside the United States somewhere, guys from Michigan, New Jersey, Washington State, Islamic recruits going to go join the terrorist organizations, and they planted looking for a target, and they finally picked the target. And that's when the FBI took them off, and they were going to shoot up a bar, a gay bar, again, like the one in Orlando. So they were looking for a soft target, and their description of a soft target is large groups of the infidels or gay people with limited or very, very small security by law enforcement. If you looked at that video of yours right there, that's exactly what they've got. Bouncers there. I don't see any armed people there, but so that is a perfect target for Islam. And other people now say, well, stay away from those places. Well, I'm not going to change my way of life because of terrorist threats.
You
Well, then
can't.
you're an idiot. You're an idiot. I mean, I know where to go and what to do, but I'm not going to give them the opportunity to make you know, a target application on my butt. But I'll wait for my time, and their time's coming. But don't be to the point where I'm going to take my children to this large event. You better look around and see how much security is there. I mean, these people are coming for us. They're not going to win, but they're going to create as much terror as they can because their goal is to die for Allah.
Correct.
And I say we give them the opportunity.
Yeah, you know, and that's just it. You know, you made a good point. You can't be scared. You can't, you know, people get, you know, just blast me on social media when I talk about sleeper cells. Stop being a fear monger. Stop scaring people. Just quit talking about it. You know, I won't quit talking about it. And it's not fear mongering. It's telling people be situationally aware. Because I'll tell you what, if I were at that nightclub, now not everybody can be in certain positions, but you know, a lot of people don't care or don't know. But if I'm going to be in a nightclub, you know what? I'm not going to be in front of the door where somebody could shoot through the door and hit me. I'm going to be watching and looking, and it doesn't mean I'm not going to become a victim because anybody can be, but I'm going to be prepared. And that's what it is. You have to be prepared. You have to prepare yourself that something could happen. Now that's just me. I guess because I own a security company, I'm just naturally, you know, always have my head on a swivel anyway. But I think Americans, we've become too complacent. We think it's not going to happen here. We don't even have a plan, Colonel Adams. There is no plan. We have no shelters. We are not prepared to be attacked at all. We you know, our government doesn't even have a plan that says, "Hey, Americans, if you get attacked, this is what you do. This is where you go. You know, this is what you want to, you know, look for." We have no plan. We're just all kind of on our own. Every man for himself in this country.
That's what I talk about all the time. Someplace, sometime, somewhere, you're going to be on your own. It could be 10 minutes, 10 hours, 10 days, 10 months, but that's it. And their idea of preparing for the big one is shelter in place, shelter in place. And that's
Exactly.
all you got. You have to take it upon yourself, and especially men. what have you done to protect the women and children in your family? I'm not being a chauvinist on it. That's their responsibility, and don't get me going on this Nancy Guthrie thing, because they created the problem. Her children didn't take care of her, and she was on her own.
Right, right. And that's it. We all have to look out for our loved ones, but not only that, but people in our community, maybe people we don't even know. Who, it's our duty, I think, as Christians and as Americans to look out, in our community. But Colonel Adams, the look of a terror attack is different today than what it was 20 years ago. Yes, what we saw in Austin, Texas at Buford's Bar the other night, that was your typical terror attack. A guy has his property of Allah shirt on. He's trying to take out as many people as he can, knowing full well he's going to die as well. That's his goal, right? That's how you get through the gates of paradise, is you go out as a martyr, taking as many infidels as you can with you. But things are different now, because now we have bioweapons. Look at it. We have all these illegal biolabs. You just found another one in Irvine, California. They're popping up all over. Many that we know. Oh, there's Colonel Adams. There's many that have not been yet discovered. These sleeper cells potentially have bioweapons. We don't know what they're capable of. We don't know what type of weapon they have. They have dirty bombs. We already know that, because we've talked about it before, that there are suitcase bombs, or nuclear bombs, that are missing. I know we have sniffer planes up in the air. We have for the past few days, and it's hard to prepare for a threat when you don't know what's coming your way.
Like the latest plan that was supposed to have happened during Ramadan, and they predicted before the end of February. Now we're into March. Ramadan's on right now. But in that investigation by intelligence services, the objective was to launch a biological weapon. That was part of it. Not just the immediate explosives and things, but actually to plant biological weapons in the air ducts and the circulation in a hospital, so people would take the biological weapon home with them and cross-contaminate the entire community. So no, people don't talk about biological weapons because people don't know how to prepare for biological weapons. I mean, how many listeners out there right now have a gas mask in their house, convenient to where,
Right.
Eventually we started out, I preached everybody having gas masks for house fires. And now it looks biological weapons, but people need to look into that, how to handle that. And it can be done. So why give them an easy target?
Right.
And we're prepared here. In fact, next muster, we're going into that and talking about the proper use of anti-biological elements and proper use of gas masks, and where to place them in the house. So we're just getting into that now.
Yeah, and there really, some things there's just no way to prepare for. I always say, man, if we're going to have a nuclear war, I want it to drop right on top of my house. I don't want to survive that. I don't want to be one of the survivors of that, unless I'm somewhere so far away where it can't possibly affect me. I don't expect us to see any dirty bombs. It can happen. I won't be surprised if we see biological weapons released. I absolutely, and this isn't fear mongering, it's telling people that you need to be aware of your surroundings. Don't change your habits. Do what you normally do, but be aware of what you're doing and where you're going. Like Colonel Adams says, look at the security where you're going. Is there security? Is there not security? If you're at the grocery store, keep an eye out on who's around you and what they're doing. And and on the highways, it's the same thing. How many of these sleeper cells do you think own a big over-the-road tractor trailer? I'm going to bet it's quite a few. And there's a lot of different ways where we can be harmed. You can't be scared. You can't hide at home. And there's some things you just can't prepare for. You just have to live your life. But there will be attacks. I am fully convinced of it.
Nuclear is different than biological. I think, they keep finding all these Chinese manned biological weapon labs in this country. What is that all about? Now,
right.
If that's not an indicator, what is?
Correct.
And that's what we teach. What's going on around you? Pay attention. How many labs that we know of ran by the Chinese in this country legally, and what up to a half a dozen? If we know about a half a dozen, there's got to be at least 24 more. We're only getting part of the story.
No question about it. And we know that there's biological weapons in the hands of a lot of people who are just waiting for that sign to use them against us. You just have to, I guess, hope and pray you're not in the wrong place at the wrong time. But we have to continue to live our lives, but we have to be aware of our surroundings and understand that the threats are there. We can't just deny it, not talk about it, and say it's not going to happen, because I still think people need a plan just in case something does happen. I was reading, I wish I could recall who it was that said it, but I was reading an article the other day, and it was talking about sleeper cells in the modern time and what we could potentially expect. Now, Iran and other, Middle Eastern countries, they've said, "Hey, not only do we have sleeper cells in your country, we have a group in every single zip code. They're there. They're in every town you live in. Millions, of course, of sleeper cells across the United States." I believe them. I absolutely do believe them. Now, how many of them will come to the call of action, I don't know. But like I said, when I saw that mosque raising the red flag of revenge, that is supposedly what we've always been told will be the sign that activates the sleeper cells, is that red flag of revenge. Have you heard about that?
Uh, that's of course that's one of the signals. I'm surprised they've raised it at this point. I thought that they would wait. But Colonel West said, we all know who Colonel West is. He's a great guy, by the way. And other national security experts, and I know who they are, including my think tank that I belong to, are saying the risk of strikes within this U.S. is quite possible. That's not what they're saying. What they're saying is it's going to happen. But
Oh yeah,
that's how
no,
they word it, not to freak out the public.
it already has happened on day one. Literally, it happened on day one. We already had a terror attack on day one, so people can't deny that it's going to happen, because it already has happened. And how frequent will it happen? How long will we have to endure it? How many weeks is this going to take place? This war in Iran, and I'm going to call it a war because in my opinion, it absolutely is a war. And how long is it going to carry on? I don't think, a lot of people were saying on social media, of course, oh, quit worrying about it, quit posting it. It's going to be over by Sunday. It's not over yesterday. It's not over today. We're looking towards a longer war. I don't think it's going to turn into a world war. We already have NATO coming out and saying we're not getting involved. It's not going to be a NATO mission. Now, each individual country, of course, can do their own thing, but NATO as a whole is not going to get involved. I think it serves Russia for this to continue. So I don't think that Putin's going to say anything, because, a lot of the missile defense type systems that we use, if we use them all, we have nothing else to send to Ukraine. And so therefore, I think they're glad that we're using what we have and depleting it ourselves versus sending it to Ukraine. Now, China, on the other hand, I do think the situation does harm China. They're already pretty unstable over there anyway, economically, and they do count on that oil, to come through that Strait of Hormuz, and it's probably not going to come through anytime soon. But I don't expect China to jump into this.
Now, China and Russia both been kind of quiet, haven't they?
So, and I think they're going to remain quiet. I always feel like Russia has to make that obligatory statement that, hey, America, we don't appreciate what you're doing. You need to knock it off. And then they just go about their business. I think Putin and Trump have a good relationship, and I don't expect Russia to get in the mix at all. But, you have to remember that, Iran is part of BRICS. And because they're part of BRICS, those are their allies. But at the same time, if you were China and you are Russia, you have to know that what Iran is doing is really wrong, and that they deserve everything they're getting. And I mean the leadership, of course, not the people of Iran. They deserve everything they've gotten. As much as I hate to say that, I don't wish death on anybody, but look what those people have done worldwide, all the deaths that they have caused.
Yeah, and when England and France refused to let us use their bases, I was at a dinner with some attorneys, and I was with Deanna, and this guy from France, who was an American citizen but moved to France, was sitting there telling us how great France was and how much better France was than the United States. And I had enough, and I basically stood up and I said, yeah, F France, F you, F your wife, F all of you. There's a little thing called Normandy. And if it wasn't for the United States, y'all be doing a goose step in your parades.
Right.
And that goes out to England too. But I understand why they've talked to our president and said, hey, look, we got problems of our own. Can you handle, what if we don't do that? Because we're buying time. And Trump says, we got this. But they still should have helped. I understand why they didn't. I don't care why they didn't. They just didn't do it. And that goes for England too. So I've got that off my chest. I had to say that. How soon they forget. And
Very
NATO, Paul chimed in and said NATO only does what they can profit, but it benefits them. And that's true.
correct.
Screw
Correct.
NATO. I mean, we don't care. I don't care about NATO. We are the greatest military power in the world, in the history of the world.
Correct.
And
And
I like it.
what were you saying, Colonel Adams?
And I like it.
Yeah. and long before the situation with Iran became imminent, we had talked several times about what is America's objective, what is Donald Trump's objective over the next couple of years, and what is it Republicans want over long term, for the security of our nation. And a lot of people still are not aware, of what the Q5 is. And there's been a lot of talk, and this is true. It's documented. It's not me, reading some conspiracy magazine or something. It is true that Donald Trump and the Trump agenda is the core five. And that Russia and China know this, that ultimately things are going to change and we are going to move away from NATO. Instead of G7, there's going to be the core five. And guess who's in that core five? Of course, that's going to be the United States, of course, at the head. We're going to have Russia. We're going to have China. They're going to be our allies. So they know that we have a plan to move forward with them as our allies. And I think that makes a big difference. And I don't think we would have made a plan for them to be our allies if we didn't think they'd make a good ally to us. And of course, we've got Japan and India as part of that core five. And so therefore, India has been very quiet. They've got their own battles going on right now. But that's also part of the reason why I think that Russia and China will mind their business when it comes to this. But how long is this going to last? That's the biggest question people keep messaging me is how long is this going to last? It's going to last, in my opinion, until either we're trying really hard to take out all of their missiles so that they have no more missiles left to launch. Of course, they're trying to take out ours as well. But, again, like I said at the beginning of the show, Iran, after that last airstrike against Iran, we estimated that they had about 3,500 missiles, most of them being ballistic missiles at that time. And I think they're going to continue to launch them until we take every last member of the regime out or until they've exhausted their supply of missiles. And they're going through them pretty quick.
We're going to, one of the things going to happen, they're going to try and send suicide boats to hit our ships. Okay. Well, that's not going to work out. Because when they talk about a Navy, they really don't have a Navy like we think of a Navy. They got one big converted for an aircraft landing, and that's a former cargo ship. But their Navy basically is made up of what they call fast boats. And these are outboard, very, very fast, large boats. But they really don't have Navy like destroyers and freighters and things like that. It's a different. But now they're going to try and go after our ship's suicide, because the same people who would put on a suicide vest to die for Allah are going to try to come after some of our ships. And if they can sink one of our big battleships, that'll be a feather in their cap. But what they don't know,
that's their goal. They've already said that is their goal. They attempted to hit the Abraham Lincoln and missed.
Yeah, but what they don't understand is this little baby. All right, that's a 25 millimeter fragmentation incendiary round. Now we have these on 24-hour shift, 24 hours a day, manned by these gunnery batteries. These things fire over 1,000 rounds a minute, and they're incendiary anti-personnel, and they'll waste those boats. So their job is not to let those boats get even close. If you got a boat heading towards your direction with a white flag, take him out. So this is not going to happen. Like, what was that one a few years ago? But it's probably been 10 years ago. They hit a boat, one of those fast boats in the side of our. We lost a
Oh,
couple.
was that the coal in the USS
Yeah,
Cole?
that
Yeah,
right. And they've trained that scenario now over and over and over. And actually, there is a scenario based on that attack, and
correct.
that is this baby right here. Good
Yeah,
luck.
we won't allow that to happen again. They're not going to get away with that. They've and I think that, if you've looked at the Iranian missiles, they've got a couple of big missiles. They've got the Fata, they've got one, it's called the Sajil, if I'm saying that correctly. They've got a couple of big missiles, but most of their missiles are just your typical little ballistic missile, which can cause quite a big, bit of damage. Of course, like you said, they've got those suicide drones. A lot of our bases have been hit by the drones. A lot of the infrastructure in, let's say, Dubai or the UAE, Kuwait, that those have been drones. We've seen a lot of drone activity, which isn't unusual. But we, the United States, haven't really deployed a lot of drones. We've done our power, I guess, is in the airstrikes. But what another concern of mine, Colonel Adams, is what's happening at all of our consulate offices, at our embassies across the Middle East. I'm not going to play the videos because we don't have time. But I mean, we have it in Karachi, we have it in Kuwait, in Baghdad, in of course in a couple of other places. Sanwar. There's a couple of different bases I've seen where the people in these countries, a lot of these countries, they hate us. They don't want us there. They don't want our embassies there. They don't want our consulates there. They don't want our bases there. And they are brutal. I mean, I have seen they're taking out heavy equipment, like farming equipment, trying to take out some of our consulate offices. I mean, that looks like a very dangerous situation.
Yeah, Islam right now is looking for a victory, no matter how large or small. They're in trouble and they know it, so they're going to take cheap shots at us. And there's no better place to take a cheap shot at America, because it can't. Our mentality is, well, not my mentality. It can't happen here. We've got a military. Really, we got half a political party. Half our political party, Democrats, want just the opposite. Someday, Democrats are going to be called for what they've done to this country. Most of our problems in this country can be traced back to the Democrats. Their day is coming, believe me.
Yeah, and speaking of, prior to this situation unfolding with Iran, in the airstrikes that took place, remember how many times we've talked about February 27th? That something big was going to happen on February 27th, because we've heard that date. Remember, we've talked about it so many times. We're like, what is it that's going to happen on February 27th? Now, I don't think anybody predicted this particular attack. I just think it's a weird coincidence that it fell on that day that we've mentioned so many times before, because we've heard that date circulating, that a war was going to start on the 27th. I mean, you've heard it. I've heard it. And what's interesting is somebody else heard it too. Did you hear that there was an anonymous person who went on Polymarket, where you can bet on different things, and they bet, I think it was $85,000, that the airstrikes were going to occur on the 27th. And when they did, they made, I think it was almost $1 million in that bet, which is kind of crazy. I wish I would have been on Polymarket.
Yeah, good. Yeah, yeah, Paul made a good point. People forget about this. Russia has no use for Islam.
Correct.
And neither do the Chinese, which
Correct.
goes back into your allegiance with these people. It should be that way. China, Russia, and the United States, maybe I'm going to throw India in there too, should be the peacekeepers of this planet. When your little guerrilla groups gets out of control, no, we take care of it. We can only do that if we ally with people that understand Islam is the scourge of this planet, and they always will be. And they're conquerors, and they want to die for Allah. Let's give them a chance. But anyway, he says that Russia and China have no use for Islam either. What great allies could you have? Right now, on a world scale, Islam is the biggest threat. It's not Russia. It's not China. It's Islam.
I agree with that. What's interesting, though, to me, Colonel Adams, is that when you talk about Islam, and I've talked about this on other shows, but when you talk about Islam, Islam is very divided between the Shiite and the Sunni. Now, here's the weird part, is that 99.9% of all terror groups are Sunni. 99.9, as a matter of fact, there are so few Shiite terror groups that the FBI does not even track them because they just don't exist. However, the Iranian regime, they are Shiite. And their proxies, of course, the Houthis and the Hezbollah are Shiite. But now terrorism is very subjective, as we all know. One person's terror group is another person's savior. And of course, the Houthis and the Hezbollah, there are considered more paramilitary groups than they are terrorists. But I think that that's kind of a weird distinction, with Iran and the regime. But yet the regime, despite being Shiite, have been absolutely brutal.
Yeah, well, they got the Sunnis and we got the Democratic Party. I can identify with that.
Yeah, that's the thing though, is our country, if you look at the division, Republicans have always been against the Sunni factions. ISIS is Sunni, Al Qaeda is Sunni. Those are Army of Islam. I could go down the list and name literally 100 groups that are Sunni. But Democrats have always sided with the Sunni. We had, of course, Barack Obama bringing the Muslim Brotherhood into the Muslim Brotherhood is Sunni, bringing them into our White House. And it's just weird, the division of the two. It's a conversation.
That's what I just said. That's what I just said. Why would they do that? Because they're the biggest threat to America, just like the Democrats. I have no use for them. Like I say, I don't even talk to Democrats anymore. I just walk away. So the numbers came out, and I was kind of surprised that the deportations that Donald Trump's involved in Homeland Security, they're saying that 30% of are self-deported. That's good. Think about that. Now that changes if that continues, it changes the timetable when Homan said it would take generations to get everybody out of here. Well, first of all, I don't think they're going to get everybody out of here. Okay. So, but 30%, 1 in 3 being deported are doing it to themselves. So the numbers have really went up. That's
as would be, hopefully expected. If you're self-deport, not only are you getting paid, depending on the promotion that's going on, anywhere between $2,000 and $3,000 per adult member of your household. But you also have that opportunity to settle your affairs, to maybe sell your home, put your home up for sale. You pack your belongings versus ICE coming to your home and taking you, and then you have no way to do any of those things any longer, and you're denied entry. If you self-deport, then you have the right to reapply and come back in legally. And we are still in a phase right now where we are only deporting people that have committed crimes. We're still not going after just your average person that's here illegally. We're looking for people who are violent offenders. So we're still kind of in that phase. But they do have that tip line now where if you know somebody, they say that, you can call the tip line and have them come out and take a look at whoever it is you're calling about.
Yeah, the ones that are the non-criminals being deported, they're just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Correct.
They picked the wrong friends.
And they stopped that policy after the shooting in Minneapolis. They stopped that policy. So it used to be, if you were a construction worker, let's say, and you're driving down the road, or you get pulled over for whatever reason, you're here in the country illegally. They're looking for you. You've committed a violent crime. So you're targeted, but then this guy next to you is here illegally, but he's never committed a violent crime. They would just take you both. It was just proximity. He was with you. We're taking you both. They stopped that policy. So now if they, let's say, target someone and they come into your business and there's 50, people who are there illegally, they're only going to take the ones who have committed violent crimes. They're not going to take the others. That doesn't mean they're not going to be watching or know that they're there. But they stopped that policy after Alex Preddy was shot in Minneapolis.
Yeah, but now they're verified and on the list, and they know that.
But now they know, right? Now they know where they are. And look at Texas. Did you know that Governor Greg Abbott, they're talking in Texas about banning Islam altogether?
Good.
Not the Sharia law. I'm talking about Islam, banning Islam in the state of Texas.
They should. They should, without a doubt. And liquidate all their assets and keep those and put them in the bank. No, I have no sympathy for Islam, period. Hey, it's almost 9 o'clock. You got to go to work.
Yes, I do have to go to work today.
I got to go walk my dog, like I always say. So anyway, DEFCON, we're at DEFCON 3 now, more awareness. When we sent that out, it's continue to train and prepare your family and yourself for the coming problems in this country. You got lots of training coming up. The Q2. Check our calendar with the Washington Guard. Sign up for our newsletter, patriots at thewashingtonguard.com, or email us or join our newsletter at patriots@washingtonguard.com. I'll keep you up to post. There's a lot of things in between we're going to do. We got a CCW class coming up, women's self-defense, of course. We got some badass girls out there. And anyway, and our muster's the third Saturday of each month. Got a lot of new members too, by the way.
And you're probably going to have a lot more.
Well, yeah, and with we would get a lot more when Biden was in office. We got a lot more members on a continuous basis. Now people kind of coast and say, well, yeah, I know I should be doing that, but as long as Donald Trump's in office, well, Donald Trump's not going to be there forever. So be prepared for when Donald Trump's not there.
Right. That's
Carl,
right.
I know Carl's not watching today, and say our prayers for Carl. His grandson meant a lot to him. And head-on collision. You never know.
You never know.
One other thing too, did that truck driver that was on the wrong side of the interstate, Highway 61, going the wrong way, and they finally got him stopped, and he's an illegal, and his driver is CDL, whatever they call it, came out of Minnesota.
Yeah, and he couldn't read the road signs.
Right.
They tested him there on the spot. He could not read the road signs.
He had a legal CDL driver's license to drive trucks from Minnesota. Now, if that's not an indicator, what is? Hey, God bless our President Donald Trump. God help our troops kick their ass. And I'll talk to you next Monday.
Thank you, Colonel Joe Adams, for joining us today. That's Colonel Joe Adams with the Washington Guard. If you want to reach out to Colonel Joe Adams, as he stated, you can do that and subscribe to the newsletter at patriots@thewashingtonguard.com. Thank you, Colonel Joe Adams, again. And as Colonel Joe Adams had stated, Carl Schneider, who is a member of the Washington Guard and a sometimes listener of the show, I want to make sure we, say a prayer for Carl. They lost their grandson, as Colonel Adams stated, in a very tragic car accident. And Carl, I have a link. He set up a GoFundMe for his grandson. I don't have any way to load that into the comments once the show has started, but I'm going to post that on my social media page if you'd like to donate to his grandson's family, who desperately, of course, I can't even imagine every parent, every grandparent's absolute worst nightmare, to lose a child, to lose a grandchild. And so we certainly feel for him. And it was on my mind all day yesterday, and just a terrible, terrible situation none of us ever want to live through. So I'm going to post that GoFundMe on my personal pages. And when we get back on the show, I will be posting it here as well in the comments. So I will not be here tomorrow. No, probably big surprise there. I have a lot of work going on. We're heading into my busy season. I've got to leave right now and head out to work. And I will not have a show tomorrow, but I foresee myself having a show all the other days of this week. Tomorrow, I have no choice, duty calls. We've got to get out there and do some anti-piracy protection tomorrow morning. Usually I work nights, so that's why I do the show in the morning, because I usually work late afternoons and nights. But the busy season, it's morning, afternoon, and night. But we're going to be keeping an eye on this situation. If you're friends with me or follow me on Facebook or social media, I post a whole lot about what's going on. And it's just because I want people to be aware. That's it. For no other reason. People are like, oh, you're making money. Social media doesn't work that way. It does not work that way. I'm up for review on my monetization on April the 18th. But let's just say when this show is monetized, I'll make like maybe a penny, maybe a penny, maybe 2 pennies on busy days, because you have to have like 35,000 views to even get like 10 cents, quite honestly. And you have to have 500,000 views to get about $10 and 1 million views to get about $20. So we're never going to get there on this show or anything I do on social media. So it's never going to be about money. That's for sure. But I just want to throw that out there. And as well, we'll do our best to keep everybody updated. We'll touch base again on Wednesday. We'll have a lot more to talk about then, because today is going to be a critical day. It really is. It's going to be a critical day. The weekend has ended. We're in our 3rd day of strikes. And the strikes continued all night long. I would wake up every once in a while and see the messages on my phone that, oh, this happened, this happened, this happened. It's so much I can't even keep up with it. And I don't think this week will be too different, but we're going to tell. Will things slow down today? There's some signs that it could. From what I understand, the United Arab Emirates have told their citizens, get back to life, get back to your normal routine. So I'm thinking that things are going to level out a little bit this week, but there are still going to be airstrikes. There's still going to be a battle going on because a regime change is not easy. It doesn't happen overnight. We're going to have to maintain. We don't even have the regime change yet. Once we do, we're going to have to maintain it. So there's a lot to happen. This is not going to end today. And Paul says, let's see here, what those are who are helping the bad actors don't realize is that the people they're helping destroy America. And if they're successful, those who help them will be the first ones eliminated. That's how naive they are. They are very naive. All right, guys, that's it for me today. I will look forward to talking to you all on Wednesday. I'll be out on the social media sites posting everything I can find. I hope you guys have a great day. I'm Tabitha Hassell with Tabs on Tap, and I will look forward to talking to you all on Wednesday. Have a good day, everybody.